Orders of the day. I recognize the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Thank you, Speaker. Good morning. It's nice to see you in the chair. Government Order G108.
Order G108, resuming the debate adjourned on June 4th, 2019, on the motion for third reading of Bill 108, an act to amend various statutes with respect to housing, other development, and various other matters.
Further debate. I recognize the member for Guelph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, everyone. I rise to contribute to the debate on Bill 108, and I'm asking MPPs from all parties to listen to municipal leaders, citizens groups, heritage and environmental groups who are speaking out against Bill 108. Over 80 municipal governments, housing advocates, and environmental leaders wrote an open letter to the minister requesting that the government provide additional time to consider Bill 108. And I want to quote, Speaker, from their letter. Quote, "The provisions of Bill 108 would limit the ability of municipal governments to plan for and provide amenities for the people we all serve. Our residents expect their neighbourhoods consist of more than just a grouping of homes. Parks, daycares, and recreation centres are not nice to have, but necessary building blocks of a thriving community." They go on to say that residents are also concerned about losing Ontario's natural heritage if Schedules 2, 5, and 6 of the Act is passed. Bill 108 threatens conservation areas, wetlands, and the plants and animals that call them home, particularly endangered species. Ontarians value and cherish their natural areas and will not accept losing them to sprawling subdivisions when better options are available." End quote. Yet the government is ramming this bill through with only one day of hearings. I had mayors reach out to me who wanted to speak on Bill 108 to express their concerns, but because there were only one day of hearings and it actually happened while the Federation of Canadian Municipalities meetings were taking place, they were unable to contribute to the debate. I believe it's wrong for the government to silence their voices. Speaker, I want to challenge the government's assertion that this bill is somehow good for hopeful homeowners or people struggling to pay rent. The chief architect of the Greenbelt and highly respected urban planner Victor Doyle had to say this about Bill 108, and I quote, "Despite its title, the Province Housing Supply Action Plan and Bill 108 do very little to support an increased supply of affordable housing, and in certain instances are directly contrary to that goal, such as restricting the use of inclusionary zoning only to major transit situations," end quote. The Mayor of Mississauga, Bonnie Crombie, said, and I'll quote, "We have not seen any evidence that reducing fees and timelines for developers will result in the creation of more affordable housing, or that savings will be passed along to consumers. The long-held principle that growth pays for growth will no longer apply, resulting in existing ratepayers and residents footing a larger share of the bill for new growth," end quote. So by reviving the old OMB rules and reducing development charges, the government is essentially handing over the keys to the province to big developers. This will leave municipalities cash-strapped and unable to ensure healthy, livable communities with recreation centres, daycares, parkland, and other essential amenities. Reviving the old OMB will drag municipalities back into multi-million-dollar squabbles in front of a quasi-judicial tribunal of unelected adjudicators. It was a good day for democracy, Speaker, and for citizens when the OMB was killed. As a matter of fact, members opposite, when they were in opposition, voted to get rid of the OMB. So I wonder what has changed. It's disappointing to see that the democratic power is being wrenched back away from citizens and municipalities who won't even have the same appeal rights as big developers under the government's proposed new system. Speaker, the growth of our communities should be driven by the people who live in these communities, not by private interests. The government's housing plan is straight out of the 1950s, when the best idea we had going was building more sprawling suburbs, and we now know the costs of that kind of development. We've evolved since then, and there are better solutions. Worsening sprawl will not solve the GTA's skyrocketing housing prices, but it will line the pockets of the big developer and speculators. To quote the recently sacked Environment Commissioner, quote, "It's fast and easy to turn a wetland into a suburb. It's almost impossible to turn it back," end quote. And if we were serious as a province about tackling the cause of out-of-control housing prices in 2019, then we'd be looking at the activities of land speculators and private equity firms and vacation rental companies. Speaker, yesterday, MPPs from all opposition parties joined environmentalists and developers to speak out against Bill 108. We were joined by a developer from Windmill Development Group, which is committed to triple bottom line, people, planet, and prosperity. He spoke about ways that we can respond to development pressures without encroaching on prime farmland and sensitive wetlands or wildlife habitat. He talked about the need for intensification around transit hubs, about the missing middle, about developing urban brownfield sites. We also could add to that list tiny homes, laneway housing, secondary suites, and co-housing to make better use of existing housing stock and urban land. Bill 108 embraces some of those ideas, and that's a good thing. But why put them forward in the context of an omnibus bill that does so much other damage? Speaker, it's wrong to put species at risk, endangered species at risk of extinction. And it's wrong that endangered species don't have a voice in this government. They can't vote, they can't write campaign checks. So on today, World Environment Day, I'd like to give them a bit of a voice, because I don't want to be a part of the generation that sees so many species go extinct and telling my kids that they can't enjoy the wildlife that I've been able to enjoy. So I want to ask the members opposite. For instance, the member from Parry Sound Muskoka, whose riding includes habitat for the threatened Algonquin wolf. Will he stand up and vote against Bill 108? Or to the member from Kenora Rainy River, whose riding includes one of only 2 subpopulations of the gray fox, which is threatened in Ontario, but not in other jurisdictions, and the minister suggests we can get rid of anyway. Will he stand against Bill 108? To the member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, whose riding includes significant wetlands around Lake St. Clair, where the king rail lives and is an endangered waterbird. Will he stand up against Bill 108? To the member from Niagara West, whose riding includes only a few remaining of the cherry birch trees, that the minister says, you know, we can cut down and pay into some pay-to-slay fund. Will he vote against Bill 108? Speaker, I ask because I want to echo the comments of Ann Bell from Ontario Nature yesterday, who said, and I quote, "If this bill passes, the proposed changes are so profound that the Endangered Species Act would be rendered into a hollow shell of its former self. It will be useless in addressing the ongoing decline of endangered species," end quote. So I remind members of this House that globally, 1 million species are at risk of becoming extinct. I was at an event last night where the Honourable Tom McMillan who was the Environment Minister in Brian Mulroney's government, spoke. And he spoke about the responsibility of all legislators in this country to address the biodiversity and climate crisis. And Bill 108 does exactly the opposite. So it would be impossible, I believe, for any MPP to read this bill and claim that it will actually improve the life of endangered species. So I ask my colleagues, do you want to be complicit in that? I hope not. I ask you not to be, and I ask everyone in this House to vote no on Bill 108. Thank you, Speaker.